welcome to another episode of IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Mike Roderick, and with me today is Mr. Sean Oriano. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Getting ready for another exciting episode in our Kali Linux series. In this episode, we're going to be talking about gaining access. In previous episodes, we've been going through our different phases. We went through our information gathering phase. We went through our scanning and enumeration phase. And now, with all that information that we've gathered up, it's time to start gaining access, right? Or try to access these systems.
Yeah, that's where we've come. We've come a long way through this process, and now we're getting to the point where we are going to penetrate the system and start seeing what we can do at that point. So all that information you've gathered and you've kind of sorted through along the way and analyzed. That's going to come in real handy at this point, because it's going to help you really kind of find the best approach for getting further into the system and obtain the information or access that you want. So this is all this is just that exploitation phase we talked about in an earlier segment, but it's just going to be gaining access and then getting in deeper and deeper after that.
Nice. All right. So where the heck do we even start? We've got all this information we've gathered from these different phases. Pick a system and just go at it, or some kind of rhyme or reason to it? What do we do?
It can be a lot of things that determine which system you're going to go after. Sometimes it can be just a gut feeling that might tell you that this is the one that you want to target. You kind of have a hunch that this one seems like a good place to start, or you may be a little more structured than that. You may be going through things and see that a system, when you did your banner grabs and stuff like that, you found that a system has some things running on it that might make it a little better target than another one. Either because remember when we did yesterday, when we did our scans, some of those things were actually automatically pulling out full banners for us without even any effort whatsoever. So that just having those banners come out, and then maybe even going as far as some of them did and fingerprint the service and not just tell you what the service was, but even specifics about it, that might give you enough to say, okay, this is my target of opportunity where I'm going to step in and start seeing if I can work on this and get further into that environment. So you really kind of gotta see where your opportunities are, and some of that's going to come with experience, just kind of seeing which ones are really going to be the prime targets, and then also interpreting the information on top of it and seeing what that information's telling you. I mean, don't be surprised if you're going through your whole scan enumeration process and you start finding default settings and a lot of them on a specific system. That might tell you right there, well, this person left all these defaults in place. Well, I'm going to kind of roll the dice and say this is probably the one that they've left some other default things in place that make it a good system to prey upon to gain that entry point. Right. So you're really going to kind of figure it out and put the information together.
You either found the really dumb admin or lazy admin, or you found your honeypot, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, we haven't even got to that yet, but yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, that's also going to come with learning the tools a bit better, so you can start identifying if that's a legitimate target or it's something that someone actually put out there enticing you. Because you're right, that could be hiding out there. Nice. That's definitely a technique that they like to use. So you got to be careful when you do this sort of thing.
All right, so we want to gain access to the system. Where do we really listen? We've got an IP address, or we know our target. Maybe we found a DNS server and a domain controller, or a particular client that we think might have access to other systems. Where do you really start? What do you do if you want to gain access? I know there's several different ways we can go about it, several different tools we can use. What's our logical process then at that point? Try to break passwords first, or try to use, I don't know, what do we do?
This is one of those things that kind of depends on who you ask, because everyone seems to have kind of a different little opinion on this, as far as when you get to the point when you have all that scanning information and all that stuff. It's like, now what do you do? I know I want to get in the system, but where is my starting point? Well, it's really your choice. Now, in the CEH, we talked about a pretty specific order, and the reason why that order was there is that's just the way they like to cover it in EC Council stuff. But if you, I do recall that if you go back, I made a point of this in the CEH course. I said that that why we're covering them in a specific order for gaining access to a system. There's nothing saying that you can't, shake those things up and change the order of it. So you kind of put that in, bring that same thing over here and put it in a context and say, well, even though we're covering them in a certain order, it doesn't mean that you are restricted to that order as far as gaining access. You might find that you can swap things around and get a better result or get a quicker result. So do have that flexibility when but we are still going to go ahead and talk about them in a specific order. You can do it. You can do what you want. Once you know the techniques, if you see an opening, go ahead and take it. Don't say, well, I see an opening over here, but let me do these things first. No, if you see an opening, by all means, take it. Don't go ahead. Don't wait if your opportunity's there. So, but what can you do is the question when you're trying to gain access to a system. Well, one of the things that we traditionally like to do is we like to see if we can obtain a password. And there can be a lot of ways that you can obtain a password, and Kaylee helps you out with that. Kaylee's got a lot of tools packed into it that approach the problem of obtaining passwords in all different all different ways. Some of them are similar actually. They've got groupings of tools that work the same, but the mechanics under the hood may be just a little different. But they do group into specific families. But then they have some other ones out there that may be a little different than anything you've seen, that might be good for a very specific instance. And then they even have tools in Kaylee that can generate word lists for you, which if you need that, you can go ahead and create your own, and you could stick your own information in it and say generate a word list or a dictionary file with all those list of passwords. You can generate it just by giving it some basic inputs, and it will say, okay, I'll just generate a bunch of stuff off of the characters you gave me. I'll do all this stuff and then save it to a text file, and here you go, and you can go ahead and use it with your favorite password cracker. So, nice. But we've got the password thing, covered. The one thing we're not gonna, I guess we should mention, we're not gonna worry about here. It was mentioned in the CEH, and we're just gonna, I'll mention it here as well, is the whole idea of having a default password on a system and having those websites you can go to see what the default password is. That's not something that's unique to Kaylee, so there's really no reason for me to sit here and say, oh, here's a website with all the default stuff. Yeah, you can Google that and find sites that have lists of default passwords and configurations. That I'll let you go ahead and Google that, whatever, as you see fit, but it's not something we're going to really worry about here. We're going to worry about using other techniques to obtain the password other than someone just you left it as a default, and we can go find it just by doing a quick web search on it.
Always a plus and always a possibility that somebody has left those defaults, especially on some of those internetworking devices like my routers and my wireless access points, things like that, or maybe even SMTP, or not SMTP, but my management protocols, maybe those passwords, but not a guarantee. And sometimes we are going to need to be able to crack passwords or to be able to get into a system when they have done some hardening on it, to at least those basics there, right? So we've got to have the tools and capabilities of dealing with that if we're going to do a good pen test.
Yes, and there is a very, very robust set of tools available to you. And I would encourage you, even though we're covering a small portion of these and discussing what options you have, I'm definitely, this is again one of those cases where I'm going to encourage you to take a look at all the different ones out there and see which ones work for you. There's some of them in here that you may not have expected to find. And the passwords, by the way, that we can retrieve off of this, they aren't just the ones that help you log into a system. There's other. I mean, we all know there's other types of there's passwords that are used for other things other than just, hey, here's my username, here's my password, boom, I'm into a system. There are other cases, and so we do have tools that are specifically designed for that. So just remember that. And then we have stuff even outside of what we're going to talk about here. We're going to leave that for another time, later on. We also have password cracking tools that are customized towards databases and specific applications. Since we're just talking about busting into a system right now and not looking at the applications yet, we're not really going to worry about those. Those we have coming up, but yes, they do have password crackers that are designed for things like Oracle and other applications of that nature that you probably are going to want to get into if you find it. You find Oracle on a system, you know what Oracle does, you know what people are probably storing in it, or have an idea that they're storing information. Maybe don't know what the nature of that information is. So now you can use these tools to break in and start getting more information, out of those systems to see if it's worthwhile if you to go any further. So they, like I said, they've really come to brought a lot of stuff to the table to put you in the game.
Nice. All right. So let's say we're at this point we're just doing our high-level overview as we usually do, talking about gaining access. We're going to crack those passwords, and that could be done in an offline format, could be done in an online format, depending like if we've maybe got their password information or their files that contain their passwords, we can try to break them offline. Or we can try to do it online if it's a system that's got an input field or something like that, or a logon screen.
Yeah, absolutely. You can. The offline has its benefits where you're getting something off the system and you're going through it that way. We have online ones that you're engaging the system directly, which can give you can give you results a little quicker in some cases, but they're more visible. Then we have, in addition to the ones here, we also have the social engineering method to gain passwords, and we're really not going to worry about that, showing that here in this exploitation part. And the reason for that doesn't mean we're not going to cover that, and we're not going to see the tools that, or I should say tool that Kaylee has that can help you with that. It's just that since that tool for social engineering is really kind of so cool on its own and got a lot of stuff going on, we're going to dedicate its own section or module to that, so you can see what that is. That's something called, just in case you're wondering, that's something called SET, the Social Engineering Toolkit.
Nice.
So we're going to get to take a look at that one, and I think you'll find that one pretty cool. So better than just saying, oh, well, you can eavesdrop or do phishing. I'm like, let me show you how this thing works. So you've got another full-blown tool that you can use as part of your arsenal.
Nice. All right, so we crack a password, and then in that process we're going through, that password we crack might or might not be an admin account, right? Might not have the rights or privileges that I need or want. So then the next phase in exploitation usually involves trying to bump that up a little bit.
Yes, indeed. That's what you're going to want to do. Is once you've cracked a password, at some point you're probably going to want to say, well, I need that exactly doesn't have the stuff that I want, so I need to acquire more privileges than I currently have. And the question at that point is really how you're going to do that. And you do have plenty of options there as well. It's just as an overall process, you gain access to the system. It's not uncommon for this account not to have what you need, or you to target the one that's kind of like the low-hanging fruit that's maybe not being monitored. Maybe it's something that because of where it sits on the system, it's not given the same attention that the other ones are, so it makes it a good ripe target. So that's good from that standpoint, that it's a good target. On the other hand, that account, when you crack it, may not have the access that you need. So now you have to go about acquiring that access. So that's where you do a privilege escalation, because you might want to run something at that point. You might want to do something specific. If that's the case, then what you got to do? You got to have privileges to do so. So that would be a logical next step after getting a password on a system.
Okay, so once we get access to the system, by breaking some password somehow, either offline or online, we escalate our credentials so that we can do what we want to do, and then the fun begins, right?
Yeah, that's where that's where you start really opening the door, and presumably at that point you can you now have your fun and game time to really kind of play around in there. Because it probably is that count that you first got, since it doesn't have those privileges, you may not be able to run the stuff that you want. So now you're going to have to figure out a way to run those things that you want. So we do that by once we got that do that privilege escalation, we bump it up, we get the level of access we need to run what we need to run, and then we start doing that next step. What you're running, hey, that's really anybody's thing at that point. You have if you can run it on that system and it's available, you pretty much can run it at that point. The question is it something that's going to get you to the next logical step in your process? If you recall from CEH, one of the things we did when we gained access is when we target an individual system, cracked the password on it, escalated the privileges, and then we executed a program just like we're talking about here. But the reason why we executed a program in that and the CEH, the one we discussed and we kind of gave an example of, or did a demo of, is we want to install a keylogger on that system. Because what we want to do is once we compromise that system, we know we've only compromised that one box. We haven't compromised the network as a whole. We targeted a system that we can get a keylogger on. So we're hoping at some point when someone comes by and starts typing away on that system, that keylogger will intercept those keystrokes, and now we grab their credentials. And so now, if you really look at it, what we've done is done a privilege escalation, and then we've run something, and we've grabbed another account's credentials, and then we've basically escalated again to another level and expanded our scope. And then you might have another round of escalation at that point. Who knows? You could have several rounds of that.
Now, as a pen tester, do we stop once we've gained access, or does it really depend on what the company's hired us to do, or do we try to move on from that point?
It's really kind of up to what the scope of the test is. They might decide once you have that, it's like, okay, we're done. You've proven your point. We want to stop this. But they might say they want you to take it further. It's their call, and don't be surprised if you are pen testing and if you are working this long enough. Don't be surprised if you are doing a pen test, and because you found a hole and were able to get into a company's infrastructure so quickly, they might have an ultimate goal in mind, and because you got into the first few steps so quickly, they may just say, you know what, just stop the test right here. We got problems. You just sliced right through it like a knife through butter. They might say, done. Okay, just stop. We're cool.
We were pretty confident with that part. We were worried about this part back here. You just made it through that first part, and holy crap, we got some work to do.
Yeah, I remember the one I used in one of our in one of our other courses was talking about the drop boxes that you put in place, and I remember telling a story here about an individual was doing a pen test and was able to went in as a employee of the power company and said, oh, I got to check the power on the lines, and was doing a pen test for a bank, and he was able to plug these things, get toured the bank by the bank manager, and then plug these things in and hook them up to the network. He did it to 3 banks, and they just said, oh, just stop. Okay, he was able to do that in a single morning, and it was like, okay, stop. They figured at that point they had other goals for the test, but this was able to get done so quickly and so successfully. It's like, nope, done. We need to address some other things first before you do that. Okay, we've got. Once those are taken care of, then we'll look at those. We don't want to open up so many doors and so many problems that we can't deal with them. So yeah, don't be surprised. They might very well say, hey, just stop it right here, pause it right here, whatever, and that's it. But typically, when you go into a system, it could be that you just get in and they might have an executed program or leave something behind. I've seen tests like that where they just say, well, I want you to show that you can get to the CEO's system or his notebook or desktop, whatever it is, and I want you to leave a file on the desktop. And once you've done that, that you've proven that the test has been successful, our security is just bad enough that you could do that. They might very well do something like that, or they might say that we want to see a situation where that requires you to have regular access. You need to hop between systems and maintain that access. So that could be something else that jumps in. It's really, again, their call on how far they want to take this. But these options are there. Make sure you explain it to them, the benefits in every specific case that you run into. Make sure you explain to them the benefits of trying that out if you see a reason to do it. But there's no reason that they have to do these things each time. They may just say, once you got the credentials of these things, hey, we're stopping right there. So whatever their goals are, just make sure you've met their goals and let them go with the rest.
All right, and then continuing on with our high-level overview, let's say we've made it into a system, we've gained access, we've run a program maybe, or done what we need to do there. But as you said, we might want to try now to attack other systems from inside. So I've got to get back to that system on a regular basis, which is another step in our exploitation phase, right?
Yes, that would be our maintaining access. Our maintaining access is just like it says. It's leaving something on the system that allows you to come back later on. Presumably, what you've done in that previous section is you have executed something on there that is either listening for you to come back and it will let you in, or it's something that you can just send a packet to or something, and it does whatever for you. So there are different things you can do at that point to maintain access, and Kaylee has a bunch of tools for that too, to open up back doors, to do what they call to just have the back doors, or to do what they call ratting a system, remote access Trojan. They have that. They have them for pushing it over SSL and HTTP and everything else. So it comes prepared with that too. So if you need to keep coming back, it is definitely there. And we're going to see. Quite literally, we're going to see with the executing programs and maintaining access, we're going to see a way to do that today, and I'm going to demo it for you, and hopefully everything goes off without a snag. You'll see, just what you could really do with that if it came down to it.
Right. So we could set up a Trojan, some kind of backdoor on that system. We could make an account in Active Directory and then VPN right in through their normal VPN process, right? If we, depending on what level of access we've gained. And I know I remember reading something I thought was interesting is these hackers, they would break into a system, found some vulnerability, access the system, and then set up their back door and then patch the system. They didn't want, they go ahead and patch up that vulnerability. They didn't want other hackers finding that system, finding that vulnerability, and setting off alarms. They did a good job of getting in and setting up their own private back door, and then they would patch the other vulnerability so nobody else could get in the system. I don't know, it's kind of funny that they would, it's like, wait, the bad guys are patching my system for me? Oh yeah, it's a way of covering their tracks and making sure that nobody else sets off alarms and keeps them from getting in there. So
yeah, where else would you see something like that when you think about it? Can you imagine a burglar breaking in your house and picking the lock and all that and coming in? It's like, hey, there's criminals around here, man. We got to fix this. It's like, wait,
he installs a little camera so he can see who else is breaking in.
Yeah,
so,
it's like we're here to secure your house. We're going to take some of your stuff, but yeah, there's criminals around here. You can get your stuff stolen. Yeah.
All right. Well, so a lot of stuff we really need to go over when it comes to exploiting a system, from gaining access to cracking a password to escalating my credentials, and then possibly running some type of program, and then maintaining access in the end. So a lot of good stuff coming up. Sean, anything else we want to throw in our overview here of exploitation?
Well, like I said, just keep track of those, or kind of remember, those different little steps in there and what's happening, because you're going to see them all. And remember, you don't have to use them in that order. You might find an opening that allows you to jump right on in to another step. I mean, for example, you may be able to do a privilege escalation without ever cracking a password because you found it someplace else. You found it maybe, those reconnaissance methods that we talked about, in the CEH, and we didn't show all the web things here again, the Google hacks. Maybe you used a Google hack and you found an Excel spreadsheet or something sitting out there that had username and password in it. Now is your time when you do your enumeration and you find your usernames in there. You could say, okay, well, you know what? I remember a user of this name, and I remember that user of that same name when I did my Google hacks. I have a file with that, and you're like, okay, let me try it, and it works. It works. Maybe you don't need it. If it works, you don't need to crack a password at that point. You can just move right on into privilege escalation because you may have exactly what you need. And who knows? You may not even need privilege escalation. If you recall in the CEH, how many admin accounts were we able to pull through Google hacks? So you may have everything you need anyway.
So you start off with the admin account, you really don't need to escalate anything, so you're good to go there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, good deal. Well, good information there. Stick around. We've got more exciting episodes coming up on gaining access. But for now, Signing off for IT Pro TV, I'm Mike Roderick,
And I'm Sean Ariano.
and we'll see you next time.